Hey, so my name is Rachita, and I don't know how many of you were here before, but we were talking about Kinder UI, which gives you components. So this talk is going to actually talk about how to think when you create those components. So in case you don't have the money to go and buy Kinder UI, or you don't have the time and energy to spend into creating those beautiful looking components, we will learn how you can do it in your everyday coding life and still create a code base that is maintainable, that doesn't give anxiety and doesn't create painful technical debt for people who join the code base 2 years down the line. And don't get misled by the title. It's long, but I actually believe in less is more. So 2 things that we are going to do today is we are going to think about the why and the how. Let's start with the why. Why should you think in terms of architecture? And when I say architecture here, I don't want you to confuse that with architecture that people think about as a semantic thing, as a long drawn process of creating perfect, beautiful looking components that libraries such as Material or Ionic or even Kinder UI does. We are talking about the process of thinking architecturally. And when I say that, what I mean is how do we go about expanding our minds to think long-term rather than making this one screen, making this one component. So why should you think architecturally? It is because you save the current you anxiety. Think about a scenario when you had to ship something tomorrow, and then you're like, oh my God, I have to start from scratch. And you look at your code base, you scramble through it, you're like, is there something I can use? And you're like, no, I don't get what is going on in this entire code base. Even the files are not named properly. I'm gonna go start doing Control F and find if I can see something similar to what I can use. And then you end up realizing you have to start from scratch. So architecturally crafted components save you this anxiety. Not only that, it saves the future you time, because when you come back and create a similar looking component, you don't have to scramble or you don't have to rewrite what you have already written. You can make tweaks to what you already have and then go about that. And more so than that, it makes you a better coder. If you look at the pattern of all the great coders or all the successful people who have even come here and who are speaking and that you are familiar with, you would see that they all talk about architecture. They all talk about reusing the components. Because eventually, what this kind of thinking does is it makes you think long term. It gives you the ability to be able to think high level. And when you start thinking high level, you become equipped with trying to see, okay, what kind of bugs and possible problems I foresee with coding like this or making this component like that, or what if I didn't consider this scenario 2 years down the line, what may happen? So when you start thinking architecturally, it makes you better in doing things such as this. So if you ever have felt like this when you code, my goal today would be to send you home and start coding like this. So let's start talking about the how. What we are going to do today is I will take a small scenario where we will talk about an example or an everyday scenario of you, let's say, getting a mock-up from the designer, and then you have to start making a component. And let's say the model happens to look like this. I would say, don't do that. And instead, we will spend some time analyzing that model. Usually what I do is I take 30 minutes of my time before I'm starting anything new on, or I'm starting on a feature, and then I just analyze it, and then see what, if I can find any commonalities. So that's what we are going to start to do today. We will see if we can find some parallels, or maybe learn a new way of thinking. So I'm going to bring back the model again, and as you can see, right off the bat, I see it can close or it can open, and then I see some buttons at the bottom, and it must have a background, maybe size, small, large. Okay. So the very first thing after this super high-level analysis you should do is you should say, does anything like this exist? You go, you search through the code base, and then you say, can I find anything which is similar to this that exists? Now, it's possible that it won't be called a modal. And that's the trick. You have to find out, is it a popover? Is it a modal that's named wizard? Believe it or not, I've seen these mistakes, and I'm pretty sure you can also face such scenarios. So consider everything. Go through all the scenarios and look if you can find anything that already exists. Once you have found that, there are a few more questions you want to ask, such as, is this something that applies to what I'm trying to do? Or is it going to be a pain? And if it's going to be a pain, is it worth my time to refactor this component to be slightly better than just starting from scratch? It's quite likely that you find there are multiple implementations of a same modal. And if that's the case, we will do a thought experiment again and see, let's say you found 4 modals, and they do various things such as, one is small, maybe user takes input from the user, one is large but also doesn't close, or it's just a popover that comes up as soon as the page loads. Okay, so once you have done this, you do this, but then you say, let's consolidate and generalize. And this is where we have now come to a point where we think how reusable components are really created. So all the libraries that you refer to, every single person who's sitting there probably goes through a process that's similar to this. So when we consolidate, we again have to think, what are the different variations of this modal that are present? Or what are some of the things that the designer can throw on me? Maybe today I have to make a modal that doesn't close. Tomorrow I need a pop-up that has to be able to close and also take some input from the user. But instead of waiting for that design to come to you and then tweak what you have, it's good to be able to anticipate what's coming up and then incorporate it in your component. Because really when you create reusable components, what you're really doing is you are trying to think about all the scenarios and create a very generic component that is not specific, but that can cover multiple cases. And once you have done all this, you write them down. And I say write them down because it helps you gather your thoughts together. So again, let's go to our thought experiment and where we were thinking about creating the modal. Now we have gone through all the problems that we found, we know what we want, and then we said, okay, we're going to create a component that is truly reusable for our case. And then we look at the result. So again, we started with something like this. And if you look at this reusable component, it is a popover, it is a persistent modal, it is a small modal, and it can take input from the user if needed. So really what we did in our process was we took 4 different components and we consolidated it and made it into one. So now this one component can act as a filler for all 4 of them. And it's possible tomorrow if you have to change fonts, if some CSS changes, or if there is another design tweak that you get, you don't have to make changes in all the places. You just have to make it at one place and you're done. So it's lean, it's error-free, it's clean, and it's reusable. And it only took 30 more minutes of your time to make this than having to start just coding. So I want all of you to take a minute here and think about the countless hours that you can save yourself if you incorporate this kind of thinking in your everyday life. And once you see that you have made this as a habit, you see that you will find more usage for it. You could then apply it to maybe, okay, I look at the architecture of how my entire code base is structured, and this is completely not intuitive. And then you go and you start naming things properly. Or you go to the designers, or you go to your design team and you say, hey, you know what, the way we get designs here is one by one, and they are random. There isn't any process, any system around how or what kind of designs we're getting, or what kind of color coding or branding we get. So that then you can scale this thinking back to the level of design, where the system that gets created is from the beginning. So the designers think like that, the developers think like that, and then the product that comes out is not only better, but it also creates happy coders. So if I could ask you to take 2 takeaways from this talk, would be think generic, not specific. And when you start incorporating high-level thinking in your process, you don't wait for a special day or a special person to do this for you. There is not a particular point in your career where you say, now I will start thinking architecturally. When you start thinking like this, you already take the next step even in your career. And make it an everyday habit. I have practiced it for 3 years now, and I have had different roles in different companies. But one thing that I have found very useful is that this kind of thinking just makes me a better coder. This makes me find out patterns. This helps me solve problems at my company better than just shipping this one project or a product that I have been tasked to do. And with that, I'm going to ask you this. And if the answer to that is yes, then I would highly recommend going to this website. At my previous job, I worked on architecting components similar to this. That's the open source version of that library, but it's really good. And it is similar to Material, Ionic, or even Kindo UI in that sense that it has reusable components. But what is really level 2 about this, and by the way, it's the part of the Angular official resources now, is that it tries to incorporate this thinking even in the design. It says, don't create reusable components just for developers. Let's go take one step, go to design and start from there, and then build systems that have consistent branding, that have consistent color use, that have components that are coming out, which are well thought out, and then creates components based on that. So there's a ton of good stuff, and all the things or the techniques we talked about and practiced today, you can go to this website and see how they have done it, and you will find parallels. And with that, we have come to the end. I work at BitPay, and we are also hiring. So if any one of you is interested in the crypto space and wants to be a part of building the future of payments, please come and talk to me later or tweet me. We are looking for Node.js, Mongo, and Angular people. Thank you so much.